I think I know what the next topic is, right? It's the 340.
Yeah,
Okay.
so it is the Volvo 340, and Chad's on the road, but he is controlling a little bit for us.
Okay.
So it was interesting. I got a lot of comments on this video, a couple good, a couple bad, but in a couple minutes we're gonna put it up on screen. You guys can watch it with us. So I'll try to describe until Chad kind of puts it up. Oh, hey, he's right there. Hi, Chad, randomly controlling everything and not being on screen. That's not creepy at all, man. What I did was I was at Carlisle Import and Performance Nationals. I met a couple of people in chat on there. John Logan, awesome dude, love your S60 still. So he was there. A bunch of other people were there. Met them. Loved meeting everyone. Everyone came up to me and said, "I watch your videos all the time," and appreciate every single person that watches our videos. Can't believe this many people watch our stupid faces still. So if you guys like OEM reviews and super new car content, that's the guy. Did it again. That's the guy on our main channel. Hanson's basically kind of taken that upon himself to do a bunch of our review stuff, because we now have a second channel where we can make videos like you're watching right now, where it's personal cars, car adventures, and we do highlights from this stream on that channel as well. So yeah, I was able to go out to Carlisle and make this video for you guys. And if you haven't subbed there, it's Shifting Lanes 2. Just search that on YouTube and you can find it there. This car that you're looking at is a Volvo 340 DL. Now, I geeked out about this car, one, because I'm a Volvo person, and two, because we never got this car in the United States. And to see one here in the United States is sort of mind-blowing, even for such a basic car. What we did is, the guy that brought it out, Chris, who I've known for a couple of years doing Carlisle, they run Volvos at Carlisle, which is a great group, and they put on this awesome show. They do food for us. They put on, a whole bunch of giveaways. People donate. IPD donates. FCP Euro donates. A whole bunch of other companies donate fun stuff and freebies and gift cards. People, FCP Euro gave a $200 gift card this year, which is awesome. So they do that, and people bring out really cool cars, and this was one of them. This Volvo 340. It is quite simply one of the most hilarious cars that I've ever personally had the chance of going over, because it's just insane. For even you think of old cars, you think small, not much safety, slow, and it's kind of a known thing. But then you get in one and you kind of go through it. It's still sort of a mind screw in a way, because you're like, how is this ever a car? It's a 1985.
1985.
So, bear in mind that in 1985, you were starting to get more safety stuff. You were starting to get airbags all over the place. Not a ton, but car manufacturers were bringing out airbags. Some of them even had side curtain airbags. Big thing. That really kind of came out in the 90s, but you never saw that. You saw that in the really high-end luxury stuff like Mercedes, the S-Class. The S-Class had side curtain airbags in the early 90s, late 80s kind of thing. That's the level of safety we're talking about in that time frame. This had nothing. This is basically a wheel and 13-inch wheels, I want to say, or 14-inch wheels. It has the engine out of a Renault Alliance. So for those of you in the US that don't know what that is, it is a really tiny, economical European car, French. Had a 69 horsepower motor, and so does this. It's the same motor, 1.4 liter, I believe. Yes, please watch our ads. Give us another three pennies. That would be lovely. New adventures on Disney Plus. Shifting Lane, sponsored by Disney Plus via YouTube. 69 horsepower engine, leaf spring suspension.
Okay.
In a truck,
basically.
Yes, like a truck, but in a tiny little car with 14-inch wheels and sidewall tires that are this big. So you
that's
can imagine.
That's really uncomfortable to be driving in.
No, it's so comfortable. Honestly, we didn't go around very far, but we were driving around the Carlisle Fairgrounds, and you'll see it in this video actually. Once these ads kind of go away, you'll be able to see it. He puts in so much effort cranking the wheel back and forth, and nothing happens. Literally, legitimately nothing. And I've never seen one person put in so much effort into a car and steering it for nothing to happen.
So I mean, that's old school hydraulic steering.
Yeah.
There's no electronics behind it, and it's really just I guess the steering rack wearing for many years and just wearing away. That's why it's very sloppy.
100%. So here's the real source. So they have zip ties there, This is the motor, this tiny little motor. There's enough room for a spare tire
Hold
in
on.
front.
There's a wheel right there.
Yeah,
that's where the spare wheels or spare tires stored.
Yes, and that is how small this engine is. Yes, that's where the spare tire is, and that was made famous, modernly famous, by the Yugo, because that's, you know, the Yugo is such a tiny little car and a tiny little engine. That's what the spare tire is. But like, this engine bay is pretty enormous compared to a Yugo. And like, look at how much room is between the engine and the tire. Like, there's a considerable amount of space there for 4 turbochargers if you wanted to. But it's like, this car is hysterical. Honestly, I would import one of these and just bring it to shows, because we never got it here in the U.S.
One comment is, I don't see any rust on. Now, this is from a video, and I'm looking at it from far away, but it doesn't seem like there's a lot of rust in that engine bay. Like, usually the strut towers are like the first things to go.
Yeah,
but
because you get like,
that seems relatively clean.
Right, it's super clean. Like, look at the interior when we pan down into this thing. Like, the seats are immaculate. This car is immaculate, and I did a little research on it. And this car was actually on YouTube under another YouTuber. I forget the name of it, but if you literally search Volvo 340DL UK or England, it will come up. And this other YouTuber had it on his channel for a little bit. And then Chris found it through one of his friends. I think his name is Jim. Jim imported it, and Chris bought it from him. So it was this whole roundabout way. But I watched the video from this other YouTuber. Yeah, the thing's very clean. I didn't get up underneath because, you know, I was making a video and I never got the chance to. But for what it is absolutely spotless from a rust perspective, or you know, from a car from 1985. This is an immaculate car, honestly.
So some of those things that like wear away, like the seals, like the trim, like usually those things just like wear away or disintegrate or cracks. But so far it looks pretty good here, again, from this vantage point.
Yeah, and it has a huge trunk. Like, he brought all his stuff in that trunk, and just like there was enough there for the weekend. Like, some of the seals were a little, like, you know, they're weather beaten, they're a little torn, because you know, this is a commuter car. You know, someone used it for a long time, and the seals were a little cracked. But honestly, I like how for 85, insane.
I like how the gas door is just a cap.
Yeah.
Right on the fender.
Yeah. This is actually my favorite part of the whole car. So what he's doing is he's you can't hear it, but he's pushing down the button there, and it goes bang, 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 every time you push the button, because it's made so this car is actually a CVT. It's a belt-driven CVT. So think snowmobile. That's the sort of like transmission it has. It's in the rear of the car. It's like two little belt gear sets that meet in the middle and go to the engine.
Oh, that's really interesting, because I think of CVTs are like a newer, like a, you know, like mid 2000s kind of like invention. Well,
pioneered back then,
1985.
Yeah. And I think even earlier than that. I think there are other earlier examples of CVTs out there that I don't know which, but I believe that there are earlier examples. This wasn't the first CVT car for sure, but very interesting. Like, you can actually see, like, this is what I'm talking about with the leaf spring suspension. So like, he's putting in so much effort into this car, and like trying to move it back and forth. Like, no, there's no, like, you're in here. This is what it is. Like, look at that. We're barely moving. Like, if you did that in like a Honda Accord right now, we would have been hitting people in cars. Like, just lying on the side of the road.
Seems like a big safety thing, but okay.
Yeah. It's like, he just did a full steering toss, and we barely even moved. We like gently listed to the left. It's insane. The horn's like adorable. Like, it's like beep 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 beep, and like people just get out of the way. The car's hysterical. It's so funny. But yeah, CVT transmission, 69 horsepower, leaf spring suspension. 1985. It's definitely a basic B kind of car. Like, there's no air conditioning. You know,
roll up windows, I presume.
Yeah, roll up windows, and in the back you can kind of see out Chris's side. There's a crack in the window in the back, and you know how 90s minivans had like the little push open.
Yep.
So that's here too. It's 2 doors. It's rear wheel drive. So it's. You could theoretically do a burnout. I wouldn't recommend it because you probably break every component in the car. But in theory, you could do a burnout.
I was gonna say, like, the CVT transmission was part of this car, but it had a Volvo engine, obviously, when it was first sold, right?
No,
or,
this is
or did he transplant like a Renault engine in there?
No, the car came like this. So the Renault engine came from Volvo. There were different iterations of the 340. There was a 363 that I believe had a, I want to say that there was one version of the 300 series Volvo that has a V6 in it, or an i6 in it. Again, I have to do more research into these because I've never heard of them, and I only briefly looked at them after the show because they're so interesting because we never got them. But this was one of those things that, I mean, this is a little tiny, 1.4 liter, but there are other engine variants. But this car and some, how you have crossovers between companies now, like Subaru did the engine for the BRZ/86, but Toyota did the body and suspension and blah blah blah. That was sort of one of those things. Like, oh, well, Volvo needed an engine, and Renault just happened to have a 1.4 liter that mated greatly to this CVT, so that they chucked a Renault Alliance engine in there. So
I pulled up the Wikipedia for Volvo 300 series. So it's a rear-wheel drive car sold between 1976 to 1991, both as a hatchback and from 1984 as a conventional notchback saloon. So that's a phrase that we haven't heard in a long time.
That's right.
So
that's
it was,
cool.
let's see, it was fitted with a 70 horsepower, 1.4 liter Renault Cleon Fonte engine. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly, but it's got, variomatic, continuously variable transmission, unusually mounted in the rear. That's for weight distribution, apparently.
Yes.
So that's really cool.
This car is basically nothing. Like, there's nothing to this car. Like, if you stand on the side of this car, it's partially because of the leaf spring suspension, but if you stood on the side of this car and you did this, whole car would rock back and forth. There's nothing to this. It is hilarious. And what Chris is saying here, he's into this car with import for $3,000.
Wow.
That's it. Now, this car is probably worth about maybe 1,000 pounds British, so it's not worth a ton of money. However, importing into the US, as we kind of all know as car enthusiasts, can be really a painstaking process and a really expensive process, depending on how you get it here and whatever. But he said with import, everything, taxes, legal, because it's a 25-year rule, it's totally legal.
Did he say when he got it?
I think he got it a couple of months ago.
Okay.
I checked out his Facebook page.
Crazy world prices. Like in the
yeah, you can import one of these right now for under $5,000.
Wow. And we're about to raise that price just because we're talking about it right now. Everyone's rushing to wherever you buy the 340dl.com store, and they're buying these anything.
Now. Yeah, I mean, you can probably go on Craigslist in the UK via a VPN, like a NordVPN kind of thing, and they'll find them or whatever. But it's interesting. There's two things I want to mention about this car. Well, three things I want to mention about this car is, one is our lovely friend here, Hanson. You were born in Indonesia, is that correct?
That is correct. Yes.
Fun fact about this car.
Yeah.
Fun fact about this car: the Indonesian police used this car as their police car.
What?
Fact.
What?
Yes. I thought you would actually. I just found that out when I did this, and I forgot to tell you. And I thought you'd find that absolutely hysterical.
That is
one
hilarious.
Because why are the police using this? Do they want to catch anybody?
Did they catch any criminals with these cars?
That's the exact phrase that Chris used. He's like, yeah, the Indonesians they took this car and they put it as the Indonesian police car. And I'm like, okay.
Holy
and he's like, yeah,
cow.
I think they didn't want to catch any criminals. I'm like, that's hysterical. So this is an actual police car, believe it or not. It was 69 horsepower back in 1985. So I don't know, but I thought you'd find that particularly interesting.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's hilarious.
Do I remember seeing those cars when I was still living in Indonesia?
That was going to be a follow-up question. Do you remember seeing these when you were a kid by any chance?
I don't remember a lot of things from Indonesia. And I mean, when I grew up there, all the cars still looked like this, right? I left when it was like 1994. So it was very plausible that these cars were still around when I was still a kid. So I don't know, but I'm going to have to look at some old pictures if I still have some to see if these, not that I'd be hanging around with some Indonesian cops, but
at 9 years old. Yeah, I'm cool with the Indonesian cops. Yeah,
I'm in handcuffs.
I can see, like, you actually bring out like an old newspaper clipping: child arrested for arson.
Yeah.
Oh man.
Oh, that's so wild though, man. Used
I
as
know.
police cars. That's
Yeah,
funny.
I couldn't even believe that. And I'm like,
Yeah.
that can't be real. And then I looked it up. I'm like, wow, that's real. That's an actual fact of life. Because I didn't think that this could be a car, let alone a police car.
Yeah.
So it's nuts.
Yeah.
The second thing I want to mention about this video is we got a lot of comments on the video. And by a lot, I mean a lot compared to how big our channel and our size is and how many views this video got. Is a lot of people are saying this is not cool. This thing is, you know, such a basic car. You know, this is not. And I posted this on a bunch of different Facebook groups too. And people are saying like, this is not cool. This is such a clickbait title. You gotta understand, I would be saying this about the most uncool car that would not be in the US. And this is, you know, a prototypically uncool car in basically any other market other than the US. We never got these. So this is extremely cool to me. Like,
Yeah.
You know, if you go to the UK or Europe in general and you say, oh, I drive a Mustang or I drive a Corvette, people geek out because they don't get Mustangs or Corvettes the same way we do here. If you are anywhere in the United States and you look around the corner, there's probably a Corvette or a Mustang hanging out because they're just plentiful. It's the same thing with this thing here. When you get a bunch of Volvo enthusiasts around, they don't exist. So when you see something like this, you're just like, ooh, what's that? Yeah. And I had to make a video on it. And Chris came up to me and was just like, you got to make a video on this car. The thing is hilarious. Yeah. So that's the reason why I titled it the way I did, is because this is the quirkiest and coolest Volvo I've literally ever seen come to Carlisle or I've been around. Like, there are rare Volvos. There are rarer Volvos than this, like always at Carlisle. And they're cool and I've seen them all. But this thing's just interesting because I've never seen one, never been in one, and it's just a neat car. It's a neat piece of Volvo history that I didn't know existed until this weekend, so that's great.
And some context to that about the comments, it's like the Volvo enthusiasts are surprisingly international and very diverse too. Like, yeah, you find a lot of people from Sweden, obviously, and you find a lot of people from the UK, and yeah, you're going to find a larger proportion of people who probably see these or saw these on a daily basis many years ago.
100%.
And you know, I was just again looking through the Wikipedia, looking at the sales section. They sold a lot of these cars.
Yeah, metric ton of them.
Yes, like in the hundreds of thousands. So it's like, yeah, this was probably as common as like a Toyota Camry here in the United States. And like if you bring up like a Toyota Camry, no Toyota Camry is cool. Maybe the Camry TRD, but again, there's so many of them. They're just like a dime a dozen, and they're not really that interesting. Yeah. But yeah, and here, you know, like to find a right-hand drive car in the States, no matter what it is, it's going to be cool in my book. Just because it's so rare. It's so difficult to drive a right-hand drive car in a left-hand drive world. Yep. So anytime I see like a right-hand drive, I'm like, whoa, what is that?
Yeah, and you're right.
And it's usually like Japanese cars because that's what people buy. But this is a Volvo. It's like, hey, you know, you could buy Volvos in the United States, right? You didn't have to import this really old thing in here. Yeah. So something's wrong with that Chris guy. His brain's broke, probably.
Or his brain is fantastically correct. Either way. It's either there's no middle ground here. It's broken or it's awesome. Yeah. I'm on the awesome end of that spectrum. And Chris, I know he was watching last week. If you are watching, I love you. You're fantastic. So yeah, just to wrap it up, I think this is a really cool car. Honestly, it's one of those things where I'm really considering kind of like importing one because I think it's very interesting. You can get them super cheap. Even like the more rare models, like the 6-cylinder one or one of the other types of 300 series that are a bit cooler or manual. I mean, they even had one of these as a red block with a manual. So red block being the famous engine that's in a ton of Volvos, you know, made probably most famous by the 240 line. But yeah, I mean, there's a red block with a manual in one of
Yeah.
these cars. Again, not crazy horsepower, but a manual transmission red block in one of these cars would be really cool, I think. So you
Yeah.
can import them. I would honestly love to do it. I think it'd be very cool, especially to bring it to like shows like this.
Yeah.
And people are just like, what is that? Like, I think that's a very cool thing to have. It's a great conversation starter with cool